Have you ever wondered why politicians often use fear in their speeches? The truth is, fear can be a powerful tool for gaining control. In fact, studies show that when people feel afraid, they are more likely to follow strong leaders. A shocking 75% of voters say they make decisions based on fear rather than facts. Fear doesn't just change minds, it shapes entire elections. In 2016, fear-mongering tactics helped boost voter turnout by nearly 30%. This is no coincidence. Politicians know exactly what they're doing when they play on our emotions. But fear is not just about politics, it's deeply rooted in our psychology. Our brains are wired to react to danger, and politicians exploit this instinct to create panic and push their agendas. In this article, we'll dive into how politicians craft fear-based narratives, how media amplifies these messages, and how you can see through these tactics. Get ready to uncover the hidden playbook of political fear and learn how to break free from its grip. Chapter 1: The Fear Playbook. Crafting panic for power. Politicians have long known that fear is one of the most powerful tools to influence people. The strategy is simple: if you can make someone afraid, you can make him listen. Fear shuts down critical thinking and activates our survival instincts. As neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux explains in The Emotional Brain, fear hijacks our rational mind. Politicians use this to their advantage. They paint worst-case scenarios, framing themselves as the only solution. This tactic, often called threat inflation, is incredibly effective. After all, fear-driven people are more likely to trade liberty for security. This strategy was seen after 9/11 when US politicians used fear of terrorism to pass the Patriot Act. According to the ACLU, the act expanded government surveillance in ways that were unthinkable before. What's interesting is how fear narratives aren't just about war or crime. They can be about anything: economic collapse, health crises, or immigration. Research by Princeton University found that public support for anti-immigration policies spikes during times of perceived economic instability. Politicians craft these stories to guide public opinion, not just toward them but away from their opponents. In today's world, with social media amplifying every message, fear spreads faster than ever. Fear-based posts get more engagement, meaning they're seen by more people. This isn't a coincidence. A 2017 study in Science found that false stories, particularly those that spark fear, spread 6 times faster than the truth on Twitter. Chapter 2: Fear in the Media Machine. Spinning headlines for control. Politicians don't just create fear, they need the media to help spread it. The collaboration between politicians and media outlets is key. Sensationalism sells, and fear sells best of all. Fear-driven headlines get more clicks, more views, and more money for the media. This cycle benefits politicians who are looking to control the narrative. Take the concept of, if it bleeds, it leads. The media thrives on fear. A study from Harvard Business Review showed that stories with negative emotions, particularly fear, get 15% more attention than neutral ones. Politicians often exploit this. They use press conferences, speeches, and even social media to push their fear-based narratives into the headlines. One classic example is the war on drugs in the 1980s. Politicians, with the help of media outlets, escalated fear about crime rates, despite crime actually declining. According to the Pew Research Center, violent crime rates dropped 49% from 1993 to 2019, yet media coverage of crime surged during this time. This distortion helped justify harsh policies that continue to impact communities today. In modern times, the 24-hour news cycle makes it easier for politicians to flood the media with fear-based narratives. Think about how political figures use talking points that stir fear about economic collapses or border crises. These stories get repeated so much that they start to feel real, even if they're not based on facts. Chapter 3: Enemies Everywhere. The art of manufactured threats. Creating enemies, both real and imagined, is a cornerstone of political fear-mongering. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. By identifying an external or internal threat, politicians can unite people under a common cause, with themselves as the solution. Historian Richard Hofstadter once wrote in The Paranoid Style in American Politics, "The enemy, who is thought of as being totally evil, is simultaneously omnipotent and weak. Politicians thrive on giving the public someone or something to fear." This strategy was clearly used during the Cold War when US politicians demonized communism. The fear of a communist takeover became so widespread that it led to McCarthyism, where innocent people were blacklisted and had their lives ruined based on paranoia. Modern-day examples include the immigrant invasion rhetoric. Some politicians paint immigrants as a threat to national security or economic stability. Data, however, often tells a different story. For instance, the National Academy of Sciences reported that immigrants actually contribute positively to the US economy, yet fear of the other continues to drive political discourse. This tactic of manufacturing threats doesn't just apply to people, it can be used for abstract concepts like the war on terror. By keeping the threat vague and ever-present, politicians can justify indefinite policies that expand their power. It's not about solving the problem, it's about keeping people on edge. When people feel there's an enemy around every corner, they're more likely to follow whoever promises protection. Politicians know this and use it to their advantage. By creating a sense of constant danger, they push the public into a state of dependence. It's not just about votes, it's about control. If you find this information valuable, consider subscribing for more insights on how politics shape our world. Chapter 4: The Psychology of Panic. Why we're wired to fall for fear. Fear works on us because it taps into something primal. Our brains are wired to react faster to fear than to logic. When we sense danger, our amygdala, the brain's fear center, goes into overdrive. This is an automatic response, it's built for survival. But in modern society, politicians often exploit this wiring. As political psychologist Drew Weston notes in The Political Brain, emotion is central, not peripheral, to political persuasion. When fear is triggered, we make decisions quickly, sometimes too quickly. Politicians count on this. They often present oversimplified solutions to complex problems, knowing that people will grasp at any answer in a state of panic. After all, when you're scared, you want certainty. This is why fear-based campaigns are so effective. A 2010 study from Psychological Science found that fear appeals are most persuasive when they include a clear and immediate solution. Politicians also understand that people are more likely to trust leaders who present themselves as protectors. After 9/11, for example, President George W. Bush's approval rating surged to 90%. In moments of crisis, fear takes over, and people rally behind leaders who appear strong and decisive, even if those leaders use fear to push harmful policies. Fear is also contagious. The more we see others afraid, the more likely we are to feel the same. This social contagion amplifies fear across entire populations, making it easier for politicians to manipulate public opinion. According to a study by the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, fear spreads faster and more intensely through social networks than other emotions like joy or sadness. Don't forget to subscribe for more on how emotional tactics shape our political landscape. Chapter 5: Fear and Votes. How politicians turn panic into political gold. Fear doesn't just shape opinions, it also drives votes. Politicians know that a scared electorate is more likely to show up at the polls. Fear motivates action, and nothing motivates voters quite like a perceived threat. Whether it's fear of losing jobs, fear of crime, or fear of an enemy, politicians use these emotions to mobilize their base. Take the 2016 US presidential election, for example. Fear was a central theme on both sides. One candidate focused on fear of economic decline and immigration, while the other warned about the dangers of electing an inexperienced leader. Fear became a major factor in the decision-making process for millions of voters. According to The Atlantic, 75% of Trump supporters said they were worried about the state of the economy and crime, while Clinton voters expressed fear over Trump's leadership. This tactic isn't new. In fact, research shows that fear-based campaigns have been effective for decades. A study published in the Journal of Politics revealed that fear appeals can increase voter turnout by as much as 30%. When people feel like their safety or future is at risk, they're more likely to get involved in the political process. What's even more interesting is that fear-driven voters are less likely to change their minds. Once fear is activated, it's difficult to reverse. Politicians know this and often use it to create long-term loyalty. The fear doesn't have to be based on facts, it just has to feel real enough. And in politics, perception is often more powerful than reality. Thank you for joining this journey into the world of political fear. If you found this article insightful, please subscribe for more content that helps you navigate the complex landscape of politics.